right, folks, welcome here. We are live in the 702. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening today. Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all the social media platforms you can like and follow me. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel here. And also, follow me on Spotify for all of my podcast shows under the Snake Sports Talk Show. Man, I have such a fun-filled episode here today, and I'm so glad that all of you could be here as well. I hope all of you guys are having a great weekend. I know for a fact we've got a lot of stuff going on. We got The Last Dance. We got part 3 and 4 coming up tonight, and that's going to be an absolute show there. And we get to learn a lot more about what basketball really is all about. I mean, you got Michael and the Chicago Bulls taking on against Isaiah Thomas and the bad boys of the Detroit Pistons. And a lot of people don't really know too much of that story, but I am really, really excited. All right, let me shift to this. So last night, I had gotten rumored reports, and I had seen it firsthand. Oh, Jameis Winston might actually have a job after all. How about that? We're past free agency. The NFL draft was a hell of a show. What I really, really like about this deal, and I thought this was interesting, because think about it this way. Cam Newton now is the elephant in the room as a free agent. He is the elephant in the room as a free agent. And Jameis Winston, and here was the one thing I would have said about this. I thought Jameis would have gone to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He ain't going there. Because my thought is, there's only a certain amount you're going to get out of Big Ben before, he doesn't begin to deteriorate, but he starts to erode. I mean, you have to think about all the injuries that Big Ben has had and what he's coming off of. And we're not sure if he's the same. And I thought Jameis would have been perfect, because the thing of it is, Mike Tomlin is a type of coach, loves his players. He coaches them, disciplinary actions as well. And he's the type of guy that can turn this organization around. I thought it would have been a fit, but that's not the case. So reports have said that Jameis Winston is signing a 1-year contract with the New Orleans Saints. What are we getting out of that? I'll tell you what you're getting. Because after the last couple of months, we started to talk a little bit about, well, what are the Saints going to do about Taysom Hill? Taysom Hill stated that he wanted to be a future franchise quarterback if Drew Brees was to retire tomorrow. That was the talk. Me personally, I don't see Taysom Hill being a franchise quarterback. It's nothing against Taysom Hill. The thing of it is, what you have to look at is Taysom is one of those hybrid players. He runs, he throws, he catches, and he tackles. So it's hard for guys like me to really kind of say, oh yeah, throw him under center. He could be a franchise quarterback. Let's give him a chance. I haven't really seen too many spurts of him being a quarterback as much, which is why, in a sense, I don't see Taysom Hill being a franchise quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. But what does this now mean for Jameis? Well, he's coming off of a year where he threw for 5,000 yards, and he also threw 30 touchdowns and 30 picks. So, one thing I will say about Jameis, I mean, you're talking about a kid who was a Florida State prospect, young kid, comes out sophomore year into the draft. He's a Heisman Trophy winner in his freshman year, was under a really good head coach in Jimbo Fisher at that time. He was an interesting kid. But then once coming into the NFL, lots of things have changed. There were even some of those off-field antics. We all remember that. But then there's also some of the decision makings that he's had as a quarterback for Tampa. And throughout all that time, I mean, Bruce Arians and his play style, Yes, he's not afraid to sling the ball. He's not afraid to throw deep downfield. But the problem of it is for Bruce Arians, he's the type of guy that, look, we love your arm strength, but you got to cut down on all these INTs. That's one thing that has been a knock on Jameis. Great kid, hell of an arm, good prospect, but has a tendency to make mistakes. He's not afraid to rip it, but there's a ton of mistakes. I've even said this yesterday about Jacob Eason. I think the Colts got a great steal of the draft because in Jameis's position, like Jacob Eason, and I'm not trying to compare the two in any other way, but they both have great arms. They're not afraid to sling it. The problem of it is those judgment calls as a quarterback, that's where you have to be smart about it. So I think Jacob Eason going to the Colts was the right thing because Frank Reich, who's a former quarterback, has developed a lot of quarterbacks over the years. So Eason's in the best position possible. And like I'll say for Jameis, he's in the best position possible as well because you have to think of you also have to think of Sean Payton, heck of a head coach. And what's the one thing that we could say about Drew Brees? Does he have enough? Does he have enough in the tank to throw deep downfield? Me personally, because sometimes that does come with age. When it comes to age, certain things have tendencies to change and they don't feel right. They don't look the same. That happens. Our bodies sometimes has a tendencies where we get sore. Sometimes too, our bodies take too much hits and we have to recover. Once you get older, it can sometimes be a longer process than a shorter process. So in Jameis's position, what I think would be nice, and I'm sure Taysom Hill's looking at this and said, well, there goes my chances of being a franchise quarterback for the future. It's nothing against Taysom Hill. I love the kid. He's a great story. He's what I said in the playoffs. He's a freak of nature of an athlete. Runs, throws, catches, tackles. Taysom Hill does it all, which is part of the reason I don't see him as a franchise quarterback. But it's not a knock. Jameis in his position, because he came into this league very young, comes out of his sophomore year at Florida State after winning the Heisman in his freshman year. And so he's had a ton to learn from. I think the best position possible learning from Drew Brees is the one thing that can change his game. And I think if this works out right, because you have to think about the offense that New Orleans possesses. New Orleans, they've got Emmanuel Sanders, who they just signed, Michael Thomas, who just came out of a career year as a wide receiver, probably one of the best wide receivers in the league. And you got Alvin Kamara in the backfield and a really good, healthy offensive line. So in my position with this, I think that when the time is right, when Drew Brees is ready to retire, he's in good hands. I think Sean Payton can turn Jameis around. And I think honestly, Jameis is going to have a much better, I would say, a redeeming career path. It's not to say that he wasn't as good in Tampa, but the problem of it is, young kid, absolutely a young kid, has a lot to learn in this league, but he still has good years ahead of him. So, and this is where now I'm going to end up shifting to this because I'm going to be talking a little bit about Cam Newton here. After this deal just happened, we now get to talk about the elephant in the room. Why doesn't Cam get a deal? How come nobody even contacted him and give him a contract or something? You know, I've been talking to so many different colleagues. I've even been talking to colleagues here on this Spotlight Sports Network. And the one thing that I have said multiple times is that Cam Newton, yes, I understand the accolades. I understand he was a Heisman Trophy winner. I also understand he was a number 1 overall pick. I also understand he was an MVP and he was a Rookie of the Year. But here's the problem into Cam's game. Because all of us like to refer back to Super Bowl 50. I have a tendency to do so. But here was the game that really did it for me. That year, You go back to the second time that Carolina faced off against Atlanta, and they were on the road. That is where I started to see all the tendencies. That is where I ended up seeing Cam Newton play at his worst. And you could say, well, they were riding an undefeating record. It was a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure. Of course it's pressurous. How do you think the Miami Dolphins were able to pull off an undefeating record? It wasn't easy. But at the same time, you had a lot of players who had a lot of grit. They had a lot of composure. And that was a team that fought all the way. Cam in this position, because we all think of the fumble, why he didn't jump for it, and we think of so many things. But then after all of that happens, this is where, in a sense, has a tendency to stroke egos. I've seen this with players. One particular moment can sometimes change the momentums of certain players. That was the moment. And then Cam, over the years, has been up, down, and that's why certain franchises are not sure what version of Cam they're going to get. Are they going to get the MVP Cam, or are they going to get the most inconsistent Cam? But then, of course, and one of the reasons, too, are some of the fashionistas off the field, and I mean, those are the little things. But the real things that I see it, and this is also, too, why I mentioned Jalen Hurts is a better-looking version of Cam. This is nothing to take away from Cam. Jalen Hurts throws a better ball. He's built like Cam. He runs a little like Cam. But he throws a better ball. That's why I think Philadelphia is going to be a very interesting franchise. I mean, you could say what you want to about Howie Roseman and Doug Peterson, but I think Jalen Hurts very much is an insurance policy for a guy like Carson Wentz. But besides the point, Cam now being the elephant in the room, and we're not even sure if he's going to end up getting a contract. I said this before the XFL filed for bankruptcy. I thought it would have been interesting because at least it would have given Cam something to do where he can showcase his brand. He's known as Super Cam. A lot of people have even told me they won't have the money for it. But here's the thing. Even if he goes into the XFL, what's to say that Cam, when he's on the field, those numbers aren't going to skyrocket? Because, not a lot of people are going to watch a whole lot of different XFL teams. I mean, except for St. Louis, but that's about it. Everybody's going to watch Cam because they all love watching Cam. We all loved watching Cam. He was the biggest rant and rave quarterback in the league. But in this particular case now, with Jameis getting the contract first, now the question holds. What will Cam do at this point? Because we all know it's difficult enough with this pandemic because we can't even end up getting a physical to even figuring out if Cam's ankle and his shoulder is right. But this is the point where it really distinguishes the two. Jameis could have easily not gotten a contract offer, but that wasn't the case. The Saints saw something in Jameis and thought, we're going to put a project together. If we did this with Teddy Bridgewater, where we were able to reshape his game and get him a gig, what's to say, Jameis, we can't turn this thing around with him, and then maybe he may get more gigs down the road. Or maybe he could potentially be our franchise quarterback. Maybe not the face of it, but he may be after Drew Brees is done. But in Cam's position, it's going to be a difficult road. And that's why I think that Cam, as we've said, and I've always compared him most of the time to Russell Westbrook, because Westbrook, super athletic, he's the type that brings a lot of energy and athleticism to the table. But what is the one thing that Westbrook can't do right? That's shooting threes. Cam can't throw deep balls. Jalen Hurts, he has tendencies where he can throw deep balls. Better deep balls than Cam. But this is not a knock on him. Don't get it twisted. But the fact of the matter is because the NFL is shifting towards where they love the quarterbacks that can throw downfield, and they love the wide receivers who can jump up for, deep balls thrown, because with this whole, pass interference adjustment to the game, that's what changes. And someone asked, could the Patriots take Cam Newton on a team-friendly deal? Maybe so. But I think in the direction that Bill Belichick is going, I'm not saying that this is a tank for the Patriots, but they have a plan in place. Everybody says, well, they've been trading a lot of picks, but there's a reason for that. I feel like that they're going to end up trying to lose games in order to get a guy like Trevor Lawrence and revamp this, because that is the power of equity for the Patriots. But here's the other thing that I think couldn't work for Cam in New England, because New England has the old school style of football. You do your job. I'm not sure if Cam and the way that he carries himself both on and off the field could potentially roll with that. Because you have to think about all the players that New England has gone through. Josh Gordon, Randy Moss, so many of these guys. And if Bill Belichick tries to, experiment on Cam, I just feel like that's a handful. I feel like it could be a handful. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but I'm only saying that as far as you got to adjust his game. He's got to be focused. He's got to be willing to play. And those are just some of those things. Coming up, I'll be talking a little bit more on the NBA, because apparently, from what I'm hearing on sources, we may have a date that facilities, training offices could open as fast as May 1st. And I'll explain exactly how all of that could potentially be a good thing to get the NBA going again. I'll explain that more coming up next. Snake Sports Talk Show. Don't go anywhere. By the way, if you are just joining us here, welcome to the Snake Sports Talk Show on the Spotlight Sports Network here. So glad to have all of you here. Got a lot up on my plate, but you know what? I got no haters. I've got no haters this whole weekend. So of course, we're going to be watching The Last Dance, I'm sure, for all of you. By the way, later on, one of our really good colleagues, MALCGOOLIE, is actually going to have a show tonight, which is kind of like, a little bit of a watch party here as we watch part 3 and part 4 of The Last Dance. And what I really, really like about this episode, because it's going to end up explaining a little bit more on the rivalry between Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls and Isaiah Thomas and the Detroit Pistons. I love this. I absolutely love this because, for certain people, and this is no knock, but for certain young people, especially in my age at 25, most of us, we were used to rivalries like the Lakers and Celtics, and we were used to a couple of rivalries. But this rivalry between Chicago and the bad boys of the Pistons, this was one that none of them got along so easily. I mean, there were fist fights, there were elbows to the face, and there was so much commotion going on. And that, to me, was real basketball, because those were the times, and everybody even questioned and asked, because even in this new generation, when we look at guys like LeBron and we look at guys like James Harden and so many in this league, and Kawhi Leonard, but I guarantee you that if they lived in that era where all it was it showed toughness and it really showed determination and that killer instinct. By the way, because Skip Bayless ended up saying this on Undisputed. And the one thing that he was so excited about is people started to realize the type of player Michael Jordan really, really was. And he had something which was called a killer instinct. He was a guy that never gave up on plays, no matter how tough the stakes were. And I know, because a lot of people have been talking about, the LeBron versus Michael Jordan debate. It had been going on for years and years until finally, and as I've said, this pandemic was not planned, but the episodes of The Last Dance couldn't have came any sooner. So everybody now is starting to, shed some light on the subject of the type of player Michael Jordan really was. And for me, I love it, because this is nothing against LeBron. And by the way, because the NBA ended up announcing as well that they're hoping to open facilities up, practice facilities, workout facilities everywhere to get the NBA season up and running again. We're not sure how they're going to end up pulling this off. There are going to be some challenges, but because we know everybody's eager for sports to come back. But of course, it's not as easy as some people think. But of course, as I've said too off the air, I even said this, I said, who's the one person who's eager to get the season back? LeBron James. Why is it that LeBron James voices out his opinions and states his reasons? Because he knows he's the one guy that's sitting on the couch watching The Last Dance, and he's chasing after his ghost. That's Michael Jordan. That's why he's eager to get the season back up and running again, because he knows that there are records that he's chasing of his, but the one record that I guarantee you he will never be able to break is the 6-0 NBA Finals. That's an obvious. But the one thing that I can say about LeBron, and even saying about Michael Jordan grew up, not a whole lot of respect, not a whole lot of love. Whether it was from his coach in North Carolina, his high school coach, his dad, his brother, the only one really who loved him as much is his mother, Dolores. And And these were tough times for Michael. In LeBron's case, because everybody looked at him as the chosen one. He's the young kid coming out of high school. And he goes into the NBA, goes into the worst franchise in the Cleveland Cavaliers, turns this franchise around. Now, he still doesn't have all the superstar players, but he's got good enough players that they made it into the NBA Finals. Then eventually ends up moving. So, but the thing about LeBron is, LeBron himself is a Swiss Army knife. He's the guy that does it all. But the one thing that LeBron, what part of it he lacks is the killer instinct. That means you're putting your body on the line. Now, listen, I know a lot of people would say, well, he hurt his hamstring when he was with the Lakers. Okay, but did you have to take an elbow to the face? Did you have to go through a fist fight with one particular team that is bad blood brewing? Again, it's no knock on LeBron, but Michael Jordan, from all the years that he's had to go through, this is why I love this story. I absolutely love this show. Because people who think that they know Michael best don't really know the whole true story behind it. And that's why I think Michael getting the opportunity to express and to share his story, I think is great. I truly think it's great. But this is where we get to learn a lot more of it. And I cannot wait to watch it. It's going to be lots of intensity, and I'm sure a lot more eye-openers of what the NBA league is all about. If you thought that this league right now is as hard as it is, you haven't seen that era of basketball before. Guarantee you. Time now for the hot press. So, of course, the New Orleans Saints have signed quarterback Jameis Winston to a 1-year contract where he will serve as a backup for Drew Brees and along with Taysom Hill. So, Jameis Winston, who's coming off of a year, 5,000 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, and 32 picks. Again, I've said this before. He's got a lot of talent. He's got talent in him. But the problem of it is, for as young as he is, there's still a lot more of game he has to understand and he has to realize. So, again, I like the signing. And as I've stated before, just a few minutes ago about the elephant in the room, Cam Newton. Now he's the one lone free agent who doesn't have a contract yet. Nobody even knows exactly if that ankle injury is healed up, let alone the shoulder if he's still able to throw. But, in this particular case, with Jameis, he throws deep downfield. He's got wide receivers that can run downfield. So I feel like this is a really, really good transition for a guy like Jameis. I think this is a really good second opportunity and second chance for him. So I'm excited to see how Sean Payton is going to turn his game around. But I like this deal. I absolutely love this deal. So, of course, as I stated, the NBA is looking to open their doors up by May 1st. So this will be interesting to see, because we know with this whole COVID-19, every facility has been kept clean, kept spotless. But at the same time, when you look at some of these sports, because you have to deal with the referees, you have to deal with the trainers, you got to deal with all of these league personnels in order for this puppy to work, and you got to deal with the players. Now, listen, we've already, we've gone through this when Rudy Gobert got the COVID-19 and then eventually got to Donovan Mitchell. And then it started to just spread. It just kept going. It wasn't even stopping. So at this point, we're not sure, because I know for a fact NHL, they're probably going to look at the NBA and seeing exactly how their methods is going with it, and then they're going to figure out an idea. And the NHL, that I'll also mention here in a second, but I would like to see. I would like to see how the challenges for the NBA are to try to get this season back up and running, because we know that there are a lot of players who are eager to get the season up and running. I personally think that they should at least get to the playoffs. because this is playoff time. This is playoff time, and this is probably where we're in the second round, maybe closest to the championship. But that's where, we'll see how this goes. So the New England Patriots, as we mentioned it before, Bill Belichick was saying that drafting a quarterback wasn't by design. So the Patriots, they had the 23rd pick in the first round. They passed on Jordan Love, and they traded that pick to the LA Chargers, where they went and got Kenneth Murray. Now, they are creating a path for a guy like Jarrett Stidham, which we have no idea, like the type of player that Stidham is. But here's what Belichick had ended up saying about Stidham. Jarrett had a good year last year. He improved a lot. We'll see where that takes him. And this was all being said from Saturday night. So, again, I still think that if this puppy doesn't even work, now you have to think about all the equity that the New England Patriots have gotten after winning championships, after winning Super Bowls, winning division titles. They built up a lot of equity. They built up an awful lot of equity. But with Jarrett Stidham, I have no idea what type of quarterback he is. I don't even know if he's really capable of being a quarterback in this league. That's where I think the real question does come out. So, I mean, he's a good kid, hard worker from what I've heard, but I'm just the kind of person that will just say, convince me. Convince me that this kid can play in this league. Because, of course, when I see all these flaws, that's where I can automatically see what Belichick is doing. Because, again, this is all playing within the cards of Belichick and Bob Kraft. Because if this thing doesn't work with Stidham, they still have the opportunity to go and getting a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence next year. And Trevor Lawrence, who possesses all of these traits as a quarterback, I mean, that would be scary. And the fact that Belichick, but here's the thing about Belichick too. He's been the type of coach who has developed quarterbacks over the years. Not only just developing guys like Drew Bledsoe or guys like Tom Brady, but he even developed guys like Matt Castle when Brady was hurt. He also developed Jimmy Garoppolo, which was probably one of his favorite guys for the future, gets traded away to San Francisco, does Kyle Shanahan a favor. And then he was able to develop a guy like Jacoby Brissett, who now plays in Indianapolis. So my thing is, I'm kind of 50-50, saying that I don't know if this quarterback may work in this league, but then again, I'm in the position of do not underestimate Bill Belichick because of the over the years, how he's been able to develop quarterbacks and how he's been able to make them not superstar or face of the franchise type quarterbacks, but he's made them very efficient quarterbacks where they do their job. You get the ball deep downfield, and you also find ways to get first downs and also get scores to get the team on the lead. Get the team the lead. So that's a part of it of Belichick. I will not underestimate with that. But again, there are possibilities, but I just think that'll be interesting. But of course, everybody's all kind of shaking their heads. All of them are kind of scratching, and question marks are floating up top. What New England? What is their plan? What are they going to do next? But the Belichick's got everything in all the cards in his hands. So that's not a guy that I would underestimate. So that was your hot press. So coming up, what I'm going to end up be talking about as well, and I think that this would be beautiful to do for my best for last here in a few minutes, is because baseball season should already still be on. It should be going on. We're already going to be close to closing out the month of April, and we're going to be getting ready to go into May. But the one thing I want to end up doing, and I don't think we've ever gotten the chance to really see it, I'm actually going to have a list of World Series that I think the public would love to see. And I'll be breaking down everything. I'll be breaking down exactly what type of World Series we may be getting out of all of those. Um, I mean, there is a numbered list of them that goes from cheap to highly expensive, and all of the caliber players that are involved. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm a diehard baseball fan as well off the mic, and so I think that this would be fun to do because I know that there are a lot of baseball fans. You know, we've got the baseball players who are playing the MLB 20, the show tournaments, which I think has been a lot of fun. They've had some really, really good reviews, but I would love to do this. So don't go anywhere. I'll be breaking all those down, and give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts on some of these World Series that we all of us as a public would love to watch. So be right back. Snake Sports Talk Show. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me here today. What a fun weekend. What a fun weekend that it has been. Being able to do the show yesterday, since we had all of the draft picks finishing up. I really, really do appreciate all of your guys' love and support here on the Spotlight Sports Network as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channels as well, this network, and of course the Snake Sports Talk Show. And like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and also follow me on Spotify, where you can find all of my podcast shows. I have 15 of them already out. So I really do appreciate all the love and support, you guys. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I wanted to do something fun here as a best for last for all of you. Because we know baseball season really should still be ongoing. We know that spring training was already wrapped up. We've already had close to being the end of the month of April, and so we would have had a bunch of season games going on. So I thought of something that would be fun, and I also have an entire list of World Series that all of us would love to see. Because here's the thing: there have been a bunch of World Series that we've loved watching, that I thought was interesting to see. And I thought that this would be fun because I think that there are some World Series that we all would love. We all would love to see. I mean, we would all probably pay to get tickets to go and see the games, and we probably would all be watching it from our television. So with that being said, let's look at some of the list of World Series that hasn't happened, that has never happened yet, but we, the people as fans, would love to see it. So without further ado, let's do this. This is not even a particular list, but these are World Series. Angels, Dodgers. It's a matchup of the West Coast. Gosh, can you believe how expensive this World Series would be? I mean, you're having Mike Trout of the Angels facing off against Cody Bellinger and Mookie Betts and Clayton Kershaw. I think that this would be probably one of the most expensive World Series. The fact that you're getting, the Freeway Series in a World Series. I mean, if it had to come down to it, I seriously think the Dodgers would win that World Series. Because think about the farm system that they've put together. The Angels, as I've said, they don't even have a pitching staff. That pitching staff last year had a 5.56 ERA, and they were getting rid of a lot of runs. They were giving up a lot of runs, and there really was not a whole lot of support behind Mike Trout. Even though that he's got a hell of an offense and he's got a hell of a lot of players, there was still not enough firepower at the pitching staff to be able to make that happen. But I think that would be a fun World Series. I think that would be one that everybody would go to, especially in the West Coast, all of California, whether both north and south and all around the West Coast. They would be going to watch the World Series like that. And this World Series would be much shorter than people think because it's only about a few miles away. And so it's not like it's a World Series where they would have to travel from back and forth. But I truly think that this kind of World Series would be interesting and fun to watch. Brewers, Red Sox. I think this is a beer fest series because, well, let's be honest. Milwaukee, they're all about Miller Lights. I mean, Miller Park. They got wheat and barley. Boston, they're known for their famous Boston lagers. It's kind of funny because, when we look at it, I think there are two items that would be involved if you were going to a game like that. It would be beers and brats. I think that would be the only thing that you would look at in a World Series like this. But I think this is interesting. You get Chris Sale and Andrew Benintendi of the Red Sox facing off against Christian Yelich and Josh Hader in the Milwaukee Brewers. I mean, I'll be honest, and I know I'm I'm saying this here up on the network, but can you imagine a World Series like that? I don't think the public themselves would stay sober after watching a World Series like that, because there would have been a lot of beers involved and everybody probably would have got all wild and rowdy and wacky. And so, but I think that this would be a fun World Series for sure. hence Beer Fest. Lots of brewskis to go around. I think that would be a lot of fun. Reds and Indians, Battle of Ohio. So, not really sure about this World Series here. I mean, you got Cincinnati against Cleveland, and Cleveland, who has not won their World Series since 1948. I mean, I really don't know too much of what's all there in Ohio, except for, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. Not too much, I would think, in Cincinnati. I'm not sure that this would be a very attractive World Series because of the fact of, yes, it is, it's determining who's the best team in Ohio in baseball. But, I mean, you have to think about it. The Cincinnati Reds had hell of a lot of players and a hell of a team. I mean, Johnny Bench, Pete Rose, Joe Morgan, and a lot of them. They had some hell of a lot of teams. And I mean, even in the Cleveland team, with Francisco Lindor right now, there's a lot of rebuilds involved. But Cincinnati's looking much, much better. But I don't know. I think that this World Series would be kind of odd yet interesting. But, it's a Battle of Ohio. You know what you're getting. Cubs, White Sox. This is where it's the real Battle of Chicago. This is where it's the Midway Showdown. Because think about it. If any of you have watched rivalries between the Cubs and the White Sox, they are not friendly. North and South is not always friendly. And you can't even decide between both because everybody would just give you crap. Everybody would just, just mess with you. But I think that this would be a heck of a World Series, much like the first two that I mentioned. I mean, this is a rivalry for the ages. North and South facing off in a World Series. I mean, tell me that wouldn't be interesting and wouldn't be a lot of fun. I mean, the Cubs right now, they've got some really good talents. The White Sox surprisingly have really, really good talents. I like what the White Sox are doing now, and it did take them about a couple of years to rebuild this, but this would be interesting. This would be a very, very interesting World Series if this had to happen, because, again, I'm not sure if we're going to get some of that bad blood, like as we mentioned here, with coming up tonight with the last dance between the Bad Boys of Detroit against the Bulls. I think that this would kind of have something, brewing up like that, because I've watched rivalries between, the White Sox and Cubs, and they have not always been friendly. They have not always been the nicest types of rivalries. Those are the ones that I'd like, oh, I love this. I love this tension. Rays and Marlins, the Citrus Series, because Florida, you got citrus. No, not buying it. Okay, but I kind of think that this is a really nice South Beach matchup because I mean you got Tampa with honestly Tampa Bay. I can't underestimate their pitching staff. I mean, their pitching coaches, they know how to develop players. I mean, currently right now, I mean, you're seeing Tyler Glasnow be the type of number one starter. I mean, he throws a ridiculous fastball, very quick in his pitches. And he's got a lot of filthy stuff. And they also do develop a lot of really good young players where on the other side, I mean, you got Miami, you got South Beach, you got, all this stuff, the 305, and Miami right now is not even in a position where they don't even have all the superstar talents. They don't even have, all the players in place. But, I do agree that I think that the Rays would win this World Series. I mean, they've been in a World Series in 2008. And I mean, I truly think with the development that the Tampa Bay Rays have been able to do over the years, I mean, I don't think some of them would really, really stand a chance. So, I mean, you could look at it either or, look at it as you want to. But I mean, I still think that this would be almost like West Coast where it's sunny, you're by the beach. And it's a hell of a World Series. Like, here's the thing. Who wouldn't want to watch a World Series in Miami? Like, I mean, you're chilling out in the Clevelander. You're chilling out and, on the beach side watching baseball. I think that would be an interesting World Series. Really, really fun. So those were the World Series that I thought of. There were a couple of honorable mentions that I wanted to mention here on the side. I mean, if these were things that didn't happen, if it didn't end up in the outcome as it did, this would have been a couple of World Series. So if the Astros didn't go to the American League, this I would have said the Rangers and Astros, the Lone Star Series, because of the fact of, Houston and then Arlington, you got the heart of Texas. So, I mean, this would be a showdown from down south. I mean, you got both these, everybody's, knocking their boots and everybody's, putting on their cowboy hats. And I think that, this would be such a country World Series where it's a lot of grit. It's a lot of grit. And I mean, I would have personally enjoyed it. I really would have personally enjoyed it. Something very, very interesting. And here's one thing. I don't know if anybody would have ever thought about this, but if the Washington Nationals were not the organization as they are now, here was a World Series what could have been interesting. The Blue Jays and the Expos. Battle of Canada. Because think about it. You got the city of Toronto. In Toronto, they had some really, really good players. Joe Carter, Tony Fernandez. And honestly, in Montreal, because not a lot of people really do think about them, but they had some really good talents. I mean, the big unit, Randy Johnson, Larry Walker, Vladimir Guerrero, and Gary Carter. Montreal had an interesting team. This was like a developmental team. A lot of these young kids, they came in, we weren't exactly expectant of what their talents was going to bring to the table, but I still think that would have been an interesting World Series. I mean, a World Series outside of the United States, and you're playing in the northern border of Canada. Like, I think that would have been an interesting World Series. I'll be honest. That I think could have drawn a lot of attention, because think about it. I mean, when we saw the Toronto Raptors winning the NBA Finals, everybody went nuts because finally Canada has a championship for basketball. I mean, it took them a long amount of years. So I just truly think that would have been an interesting World Series. Lots of really, really good names, but unfortunately, as time passes on, everything kind of changes. So I hope you guys all have a great weekend. Thank you for tuning in here into the Snake Sports Talk Show. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channels on both the Spotlight Sports Network and the Snake Sports Talk Show. Follow me on Spotify for all of my latest podcast episodes. And like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Love to hear all of your thoughts on some of my posts. I am active daily, so I'm always looking for a lot of great comments and great responses. This is Jake the Snake Silva signing off. Have a great weekend and also have a great week ahead of you, and we will see you next Saturday and Sunday, 10:30 a.m. Pacific and 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a good weekend.